you'll be pleased to know we've got somebody here from the IFS, research economist Christine Farquharson, who's going to tell us exactly how they came up with these numbers. Christine, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. The mounting cost of debt, interest, healthcare and defence are all piling pressure on strained public finances, basically. Why do you think both the parties, both main parties, are not quite being honest with us about this?
We've been warning throughout this election about the conspiracy of silence. And what we mean by that is that both parties, both Labour and the Conservative Party, have signed up to pretty tight fiscal rules. They've signed up to not increasing a large number of taxes. And they've, by and large, signed up to the public service spending plans that were penciled in at the March 2024 budget. Now, those public service spending plans look really very tight indeed, and likely undeliverably tight. So there are a whole range of big decisions about what is going to give if the parties want to achieve these huge commitments that they set out in their manifestos. Well, on the plans that they've given us, on the numbers that they've given us, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to do all of that. And so there's a real question here about which piece of the puzzle is it that that's going to give first.
So when Keir Starmer insists that everything that the Labour Party is sort of predicting that they will do, and everything that they say that they want to do is fully costed, are you saying that's not true?
It's not true of either of the main manifestos. You know, they're fully costed in the very narrow sense that there's a table at the end and it sets out, here's our specific spending commitments, here's our specific tax rising measures, and those two things add up. But the much bigger picture here, you know, in the grand scheme of things, these manifestos give away a couple of billion, take away a couple of billion. In the public finance terms, the much bigger questions are what the baselines are for these public services. Depending what assumptions you make on NHS spending, there's something like a £40 billion gap between just depending which baseline you pick. So a couple of billion of specific commitments here or there set against that scale of uncertainty is really, we're still left guessing about the bulk of what's going to happen over the next 5 years.
Interesting. So, Tim, for the people listening to this and watching this morning, wondering whether or not Labour's going to be spending more money, asking for more money, taxing us more, or whether the Tories are going to be the safer bet, I think for a lot of people, much of this is gobbledygook. They kind of go, I mean, as we're hearing from Christine there, billions here, billions there. I mean, I don't think people really understand why that's good or bad.
No, and I think that a lot of people know that they have a sense of is that their existing tax money isn't spent very well.
Right.
And so I think if there was a direct connection, people thought, well, okay, I'm willing to pay more tax if I know Granny is going to get more likely to get the operation she's been waiting for.
Yeah.
But I think people have lost confidence in that connection. I think people know a lot of waste in the public services. They know the NHS is one of the only organisations still left in the world that uses fax machines and things like that.
Right.
Just a trivial example on the face of it, but an illustration really of perhaps an organisation that's behind in technology. And I think that's true in a lot of the public sector.
Yes.
We know that most people in the private sector have largely returned to the offices because their bosses insist on it, because they've analysed the productivity. You can work at home a bit, of course. There's advantages in that. Whereas the public sector, there's still enormous, much greater working from home. Why is that? And I think it's partly because the public sector is managed less well.
Yes.
And so I think it's that until people are convinced that they're really getting value for money, I think politicians know it's very difficult to ask for more taxes from them.
Christine, let me come back to you on this one, because obviously we keep being told that we're going to be seeing taxes rising. I think your report says 5 new taxes minimum for people. Keir Starmer's been very clear about his one conviction, which is that he doesn't want to tax working people anymore. We only just found out what he meant by that last week. But, I mean, so what taxes are you expecting to go up?
So what we know is that both Labour and the Conservatives have ruled out most plausible increases on income tax, national insurance, and VAT. And that's about 2/3 of the UK's revenue. So once you take those off the table, you've done 2 damaging things. You've removed a lot of flexibility in terms of where you could look if you did want to raise revenue, which is not to say that you necessarily would. But you've also taken off the table the opportunity to reform those 3 big taxes and make them more friendly to growth, more friendly to the economy. But, both of the parties have said that's not going to happen. And so we're left looking to a range of other smaller taxes. You could, for example, think about reforming inheritance tax and to make that more economically efficient. You could look to reforming capital gains tax to make that more economically efficient. basically you could pick any tax in the economy. There would be a reform to that tax that would make it a better tax, as in less damaging to economic growth. But I think what we need to hope that the parties are going to do is go down that virtuous path, rather than going down the path of just looking to get a couple of billion down the back of the sofa, however way they think that they can do that voters won't notice, which is how we end up in a situation with a plethora of taxes, none of which particularly fits well with one another, all of which aren't designed as best they could be so that they have the minimum possible impact on the economy.
Christine Farquharson from the IFS, thank you very much indeed. Tim, I guess coming back to you for a final word, it looks as though perhaps what we'll see from Keir Starmer, if he is in government, is more ideologically based taxes more than anything else, right?
Yeah, and that's the Labour instinct. It's always been the instinct is to raise taxes. And part of the reason why I worry a little bit about the Institute for Fiscal Studies being at the heart of debate is, where is the think tank really dedicated to public service reform? Where's the think tank? Where's that engine for public discussion really talking about how we really do need to modernise our health and education services to bring them up to the standards of actually a lot of developing countries in Europe like Poland, who are much more innovative in how they pursue the delivery of these services. So, and I think the instinct of Labour will be to put their hand in our pockets rather than actually make the difficult decisions with the public service unions.
Yes, I think you might well be right. Tim, thank you very much indeed.